Hello and welcome to another video tutorial from Blender HD. My name is Jonathan Lampel, and in this tutorial series I'm going to be showing you how to make a scene realistic. So, to start off, I actually downloaded a file from BlendSwap. I was kind of lazy, so it is by a user named Mise. I am probably pronouncing that awfully, but he says that is a scene he made in Blender. He got inspired by The Walking Dead, and I didn't have to give him credit because it's for fun. It took him about an hour, so nothing serious, but I'm giving him credit here, and you can go and download it and follow along. One thing that I did is I'm using cycles, and I deleted all the materials. The reason for that is, while this is a nice picture, especially for 1 hour of work, you can see that it's not exactly realistic, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but just first off, the reason for that is the scale is off, and it just doesn't look all that great. We'll be using some of the same textures that he has, but we will be doing it ourselves and transforming this, mediocre scene into something really eye-catching. And I don't blame him at all because he said he took like an hour to do it, and I think this is impressive to do in just an hour. So jumping right in, the first thing that I do after the modeling, which we'll be doing a little bit more modeling later, when we get into details. However, I'm going to be doing the lighting and texturing first, and in this video just covering realistic lighting. One of the most important things about making a realistic image is the lighting. It's something that's often underappreciated or I don't even know the word. People just don't work on it as much as they should, and it really helps bring an image and help it to really attract the viewer's attention to the right places. So I went ahead and rendered this out with no materials, and you can see that it doesn't look very good. It looks very flat, there's these awful sharp edges, and overall it's just not that great of a scene. So one thing that we can do is fix the lighting, and I'm going to jump over to slot 2 so we can compare our final result to this. So for realistic lighting, this is an outdoor scene, and obviously right now we just have a simple sun, and we have a background, and that is all of the lighting that we have. We can go ahead and set up a 3-point lighting, but to do good lighting, a trick to setting it up well is to only look at one piece at a time. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to turn on screencast keys and change my theme so you can actually see what's going on. This theme tends to look kind of funny when I'm doing video tutorials. Themes, reset to default. Okay, so maybe that'll make it a little bit more clear for you to follow along. And screencast keys is on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the window right in half, and I'm going to use this side as my rendered side so I can see the lighting and tweak it real time. This is one of the big reasons I switched over to cycles, is because I can just tweak this lighting and see its effect without having to re-render every single darn time. Okay, so the big things that we're looking at are the shadows that come across and down, and the shadows cast off here, and we just want to make it look nice. But one thing that is really important with the key light, this is our key light, our main light source in this image, we want to make sure that it gives it a nice depth, I guess. Like you can see if I turn it straight on, it looks very, very flat. And by creating shadows moving across the image, you definitely give it depth. So what I'm going to do is rotate it until I think that it's giving it a nice depth. You can see that there are shadows on all of these things there. There's a nice gradient on the barrels, on the wall, even on that paper is much better lit like that. So I like that angle, but I also want these bars down here, the kind of slots, I want them to be maybe positioned slightly different, so I can go into side view and just kind of tweak that. Maybe I want them coming over the barrels just a little bit. One thing about just basic composition is that you definitely want things overlapping a little bit. It just tends to make it more realistic. So when you're working on realism, try to make things overlap just a little bit and avoid visual tangents. You can see that if I rotated this too much this way, that line is like directly intersecting there, making sort of a visual tangent. So I can maybe go a little bit more this way. Alright, and one thing I can do to make this, well, I'll do that later. Okay, so this gives it a nice depth, but let's see, there's kind of a space between there and the wall. Maybe I want to move it a little bit more that way. Okay, this is just tweaking. One thing that I don't remember if I mentioned is that in this video tutorial, I'm going through the entire process of making a scene realistic. I mean, that's obvious from the title of the video, but just in case you're wondering, this isn't like a necessarily how to make this scene realistic or, all of the, bullet point steps to do it. This is more of showing you the process of how I get from, modeling to a realistic scene, and tips and tricks along the way that will really help you avoid trouble and will just make everything a whole lot better. And one of those things is doing lighting first, so that when you go ahead and apply the materials, you know how things are going to look and the lighting is already set up. You can definitely do tweaks and stuff later, but getting just the basic setup first is a really good idea. Okay, so I think that looks fairly good, but it's too sharp for, a regular daytime scene. It might be that sharp, but I think I want it to soften up a little bit, excuse me. So I can change this to maybe 0.025 and just get softer shadows there, and I think that looks a whole lot better. There we go, that's looking pretty good. And also what I can do is I can change the color, and if I change this to a little bit more yellow, that's just going to help it look more realistic because it's coming from the sun, and the sun tends to give a yellowish look to things. Alright, so I think that is enough for the sun. Now I'm going to go and do the fill light. If you know 3-point lighting, you have a key light, which is your basic light, usually at an angle from the camera. Then you have a fill light, generally from 90 degrees angle to the camera, and that just kind of fills in the shadows so there's no like straight blacks. It just helps give more depth to the scene. But and then you have a rim light, which we'll add in later. But in this case, since it's an outdoor scene, our fill light is going to be the atmosphere itself. So since it's not like an indoor or studio lighting, we can go ahead and add our background color, and that's going to act as our fill light and just kind of fill in those shadows and make it look nice. So I'll give that a strength of 1, and I can change this to be a little bit more blue, and that just for some reason the light from the atmosphere tends to be a little bit more blue, and it just, you can see the combination of the yellow and the blue gives this a nice outdoor feel to it, and it just looks a whole lot more real. So I think we're off to a good start. One last thing that I'm going to do for the lighting is I'm going to go into side view, and I'm going to duplicate this lamp here, and I'm going to make it completely white. I'm going to rotate it and make it come down, and this is going to be our rim light. And I'm going to turn off shadows so we can see it through the wall, and I'm going to have it be pointing straight at the camera. I might move it if need be, but for now this should be okay. So you can see that if I angle it like that, it's giving us some lighting there, but we definitely don't want it there. Let's see. I think maybe turning off shadows is a bad idea. What if I do cast shadow and turn that to a maybe if I just turn this off. Excuse me, I'm just kind of doing this as I go because I want to show you the process itself and not necessarily, point A to point B. So it might take a little bit longer, but I think in the long run it'll help you understand things better. Okay, so now this wall here, if I turn off shadow, is not casting a shadow. And since the other lights are pointed this way, I think that's... but you do need a shadow right in there. Okay, well, in that case, I will just change this to a area light. And move it through the wall there. If I change it to Hemi. I don't generally work with Hemi or area lights, but maybe that's just me. Okay, I'm not quite sure why I'm not seeing it. Oh, because the power's down way too low. Okay, so the area light acts as a plane, maybe a spotlight, so it can directly control exactly where it's going to be hitting. So I think a spotlight is good in this instance. I'll turn the cone shape up like really, really high. Move it over there. Just so it includes all those barrels. Maybe even 180. And that's just going to give us a nice kind of glow on the edge, popping those out from the wall. And maybe 180 is too much. 160. Okay, so if I place it right there, it's going to hit both of the barrels, and hopefully not the wall too much. Okay, there we go. So you can see that there's a little bit of light coming off and just kind of hitting the barrels, really making it stand out. So you can see this better if I turn off this lamp there. You can see what it's doing is really, it's adding a little light there. Maybe there's a light actually sitting behind there that's on, I don't know. But since it's being blocked, we can just make up a reason for it. And I'll move that down so there's no light there. And it just kind of helps it, the barrels, which is sort of the focus, to really stand out from the background. And it helps it look good. So I might turn it down just a little bit. Okay, 75, and I think we're good. One thing, in the original blend file, there was a few lights in here kind of giving off like a radiation sort of light, so I'm going to add that in here right now. I'm going to add a point light. I'm just going to stick it right inside the barrel there. Right about there. And I'm going to make this green, like a really nasty, sickly, disease green. And maybe turn the size up on that, so it's a really soft glow. And I'm going to turn down the strength to, what does 25 do? Maybe even lower than that. Okay, so it's just giving off a little bit of a glow, not a ton, but just enough that you can see it, it's noticeable, and it looks fine. I don't like how it's, well, actually that's okay. I was going to close up this end, but actually it looks nice hitting the barrel and right there, so that's fine. Now I'm going to add one to the other barrel, so I'm going to Shift-D, duplicate that, and just stick it right in there. And this scene is slow because it's on GPU compute, so if I turn it to CPU, then I can move around much smoother. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you can't see that too much, but just enough on the edge of that it'll just give it a nice little extra glow, making it I don't know, it'll help to improve the whole atmosphere of the scene. Okay, so lastly for lighting, I think this is looking fairly good so far. You can see that there's these sharp edges right in there. There's like a sharp edge there, and there's a sharp edge down there, and it looks really, really bad. So one thing we can do is go ahead and edit the topology. One thing that I found that you can do is go ahead and add edge loops to the sides there, and you can see that really the barrels, even like shaded as they are, they don't look that good, and a few good well-placed edge loops will fix that. So I can delete the collision on this. I'm not sure why they were set to be collision. Maybe if there was like a rain, maybe if it was raining or something and it was particles were bouncing off. I don't know. Anyway, I can go into edit mode and just press Control R and bring up an edge loop there. Bring an edge loop there. And you can see what that did is it really sharpened up that and just made it look a little bit more smooth. And yeah, you can see compared to the other ones, it just looks a whole lot better, more detailed. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other portions of this. This is going to totally wreck the UVs, but that's okay because we don't have any textures applied and we can go ahead and UV this later. Okay, and this barrel doesn't have any thickness, and you know, it's definitely not very realistic to have something that's paper thin, so I'm going to extrude that layer there. I selected the edge loop by pressing Alt and then clicking on that, just in case you needed to know. And now I can extrude this down, scale it out just a little bit, and now it doesn't look so paper thin, so that when we look at it from an angle, it just looks more realistic. Now I'm going to go ahead and edit this one. Same thing as last time, I'm going to press Control R and add some edge loops in here. And just like before, I'm going to add some thickness to that. Okay, because you can't really see the sides on that too much, but just adding that little bit of thickness will help with the shading and such. So, alright, so now if we go ahead and look at this as it's rendered, you can see that the nasty edges are gone just by changing a little bit of topology. And adding those perimeter loops, we have pretty much fixed that issue there. You can see that there's still some of that line right down here inside the cracks, so maybe what I can do is sharpen those up a little bit. Not like that. And I'll just see if that fixed it. No, not really. Maybe if I W and let's try recalculating the normals. Maybe I can't do that from there. In the toolbar, I know there's a shortcut, but I forget what that is. Recalculate. Control N. There we go. I press recalculate. Tab out. That still didn't work. Maybe it's just a shadow. Oh, I think it's just because there's a thing in the middle sticking out, and I just was mistaking that for bad shading. Okay, well that works fine, and you know, you can see that it just looks a whole lot better. We could go ahead and add a subsurf if we wanted to make it, like if we were zooming in real close, that would help it make it look more realistic if we did that. But in this case, since it's, you know, far enough away, I don't think it's necessary. Though it does look a whole lot better, so I'll just add one just in the render, so when we render it out, it'll look just a little bit better. So you might not think this is really part of lighting, but it is. It really is, because it's doing with how the light flows over the surface, and will improve our lighting. Well, it'll just make the lighting look better because its topology really affects how light flows over the surface. So you do have to keep topology in mind, even if you're not animating, because sometimes lighting will get you. Alright, so Looking at that, I think that looks a whole lot better than what we had before. I will go ahead and render it out and see the difference between the first and the second one. So just hold on while I pause the mic and I'll be back in a second. Okay, one quick thing that I noticed while I was rendering is that this area back here, you can see that there's a really sharp line, and we definitely don't want that, especially from our for fill light. We don't want that affecting the scene. So I'm just going to up the size on that. So that it still gives us the nice edge on the back, but it's going to be soft enough to where it's not going to affect the scene like that and really kind of hurt the effect that we were going for. So I can increase it now a little bit. Maybe that's a bit too soft. And I'm just going to go ahead and tweak it a little bit. So it's going to be at a little bit less of an angle, but it's still going to hit those barrels. And it's going to be a little bit more above, so it'll pop it out just a little bit more. And let's render it there and see how it goes. Okay, so you can see that there's kind of like a gradient coming down from there, which is really nice. It's lit the top side of that barrel quite nicely. And back here we don't have that nasty edge. So now that that is done, then I'll go ahead and render it. Oh yeah, one last thing is I wanted to make the light a little bit brighter, so change that to 1.5. And there we go. So I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so here we have our scene rendered. You can see that it looks much better than what we had before. If I switch between the two, you can see that this one looks flat, boring, unrealistic. It's got these harsh shadows. It just looks bad, very flat, and it just doesn't look very good. But then when we go ahead and tweak our lighting, even with a very simple lighting setup, all of it combined just makes it look much more realistic. And as we go through the next part of the process, which is materials and texturing, that will make our scene a whole lot better, and it'll just really help us as we progress through the scene, and it gives us a nice foundation of what exactly we want it to look like and the mood of the image. So one very last thing, I realized that since the barrels for some reason don't have a bottom to them, I guess that's just the way the creator made them, it is not intersecting the ground, and so the light passes through. So we can just take the barrel, move it down a bit, and problem solved. So that is it for this part of the tutorial. It'll be a couple more parts to it. Like I said, next time we'll be going over materials and texturing and showing you a lot of the common mistakes people make with textures and materials, and just how to make realistic materials, which will complement the lighting and just turn out to look great. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and I hope you like this as kind of experimental, showing you the process instead of step by step. But I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for watching. See you next time.